Support Name Explain on Patreon for ad-free videos, exclusive podcasts and blog posts, and to help choose what names get explained. Click the link in the description.
If you've ever been to an airport, then you will know that as well as having a name, most airports tend to have another identifier too. That being 3 letters that you'll find all across the place. You can spot it on your ticket, on the flight update board, and even on your luggage tag. Great examples are the likes of LGW for London Gatwick, AMS for Amsterdam Schiphol Airport, or even JFK for, well, JFK Airport in New York City. These are known as airport codes. Well, technically they're called IATA airport codes, but we'll explain that in a moment. While they may just seem like a simple shortening at first, airport codes are way more important than just that and play an important role in the aviation world. They are also very much names in their own right, hence why we're speaking about them here. But most importantly, they can be really weird at times. It's probably worth noting here too, before anyone pesters me about it in the comment, that there's actually a second kind of code for airports too, that being ICAO codes that actually consist of 4 letters. This 4th letter is actually the start of the code, and the ICAO have actually broken down the world into lettered sections, e.g. the continuous USA is represented with the letter K, South America with S, and Northern Europe with E. We aren't really focusing on these guys today as they aren't used as publicly, but still it would have been a shame if I didn't mention them. As mentioned, the full names of these codes are the IATA airport codes, and in case you are wondering, IATA stands for the International Air Transport Association. It's these guys who assigned these codes to airports of the world. They came into existence for quick communication reasons. Pilots have to end up in all different corners of the globe, so it's perhaps expected that they may not fully understand the names of where exactly they're going to, and pilots most likely talk to other pilots of different nationalities who speak completely different languages. Also, pilots may simply not be 100% sure on how to pronounce the name of where they are landing. And trust me, that's a reason I can get behind. So to simplify and streamline communications, these codes were introduced so pilots regardless of language and location could understand what places were being talked about easily. It's not only pilots that use these codes, however, but other crew members and even passengers too. These 3-letter codes are often used in place of airports' actual names in things like computer systems and directories. One of the heads over at the IATA spoke about them, saying that IATA codes are integral parts of the travel industry and essential for the identification of an airline, its destination, and its traffic documents. They are also fundamental to the smooth running of hundreds of electronic applications, which have been built around these coding systems for passengers and cargo traffic purposes. Of course, in the grand scheme of history, airports aren't that new, so neither are these codes. They actually only first came into being in the 1930s. At this time, air travel wasn't quite the behemoth that it is today. Not as many people flew and there were not as many airports. This meant that initially airports could choose their own codes, and these codes initially consisted of just 2 letters. Though as air travel expanded, then so did these codes. By the 1940s, there were already too many airports for the 2-letter system to handle. A quick bit of maths informs that there are just 325 different possible 2-letter combinations with the 26 letters of the Latin alphabet. Using 3 letters, however, gives us 17,576 different combinations. It's easy to see why with the boom in air travel that 3 letters were adopted over 2. While some airports added a 3rd letter that fit their name, some just added a random letter. In example, Los Angeles International Airport was using the 2-letter code of LA, obviously. Though when they needed to add a 3rd letter instead of something that fit like LAG or LLA or LAI, they just shoved an X on the end, instantly creating one of the most well-known airport names out there, and perhaps the best example of an airport more commonly known by its code than its actual name. While it seems that the airport itself got to pick the X in LAX, this doesn't seem to be the case anymore, as it seems that the IATA are the ones who decide upon what code is given, and how they decide upon the code seems to vary from airport to airport. The main way in which they decide upon the code is from the name of the airport itself. In example, Narita Airport in Japan uses the code of NRT. Some however reference the name of the place they serve rather than the airport's name itself. We mentioned this earlier with Schiffel's code of AMS as it serves Amsterdam. But we also have Ronald Reagan National Airport, which has the code of DCA, with the DC referencing the fact that this airport serves Washington DC. As mentioned, Gatwick's code is LGW, and what I enjoy so much about this is how the L references the city of London, which it serves, and the GW references the airport's name of Gatwick. However, these codes can come about in completely different ways too. Sometimes the code references something historic about the area, or is an ode to a figure from that part of the world. These airport codes are of course entirely unique, meaning no two are the same. That, however, is not quite the case for places around the world, it would seem though. If you've watched any other name explain videos, then you most likely already know that a lot of places share names or have similar names at the very least. While sometimes similar names are coincidences, a lot of the time cities share names due to people from one part of the world claiming somewhere else entirely and slapping one of their names on it. While places having the same name cause mild confusion for the everyday person, they can be something of a headache for the IATA, especially when both of those places have airports. A great example is with Manchester in the United Kingdom and Manchester in New Hampshire in the USA. Both these Manchesters have airports, and both airports reference the name Manchester. The UK airport is simply called Manchester Airport, while the US one is called Manchester Boston Regional Airport. This could potentially lead to all kinds of confusion, with many confused Mancunians ending up in New England. Luckily, however, airport codes are to the rescue to clear up any confusion this may cause. The UK Manchester Airport goes by the code of MAN, while the US Manchester Airport gets the code of MHT. What I love about the US Manchester side is that it doesn't reference the Boston part of the name. Instead, it decides to focus on the three key consonants of the name Manchester, as opposed to the UK Manchester Airport that just uses the first three letters. The two of them are great examples of how we can create such different codes from the exact same word. While these two codes are pretty understandable and logical once we look into them, that unfortunately is not the case for all of these codes. As mentioned, codes don't only have to reference the airport or city's name, but can relate to history or something else entirely. This means that some of these codes are real head scratchers. Take Beijing International Airport an example. Its code is PEK. This one might seem a tad odd at first, but it's pretty understandable, especially if you know your history. For a long time, this city was known as Peking in English and other languages. It was only relatively recently that Beijing became its name in the West, though of course it's always been called that in its home nation of China, which we've covered in the past. Despite this change of name, the code still refers to that old name, despite the fact that the city is called Beijing and so is the airport. If you're wondering if the airport can have a more fitting code, well, they seem to be taken too. The two that come to mind for me would be BEJ and BIJ. BEJ though is used for Baru Kilamaru Airport in Indonesia, and BIJ is being used for Bilao Airport in Papua New Guinea. Though apparently this airport is closed now, so perhaps Beijing could swipe it from them. Another great example of a confusing code is with the Windy Cities International Airport. Chicago's O'Hare International Airport uses the code of ORD. This clearly does not relate to the name Chicago, and I suppose at a stretch it could relate to the name O'Hare, which by the way comes from Edward O'Hare, the US Navy's first Medal of Honor recipient in the Second World War, though it does not come from him. Instead, it relates to this airport's old name, which in turn relates to what was in this land before the airport was there. Initially, this airport was called Orchard Field Airport, as it was built on the grounds of an orchard. The ORD that comprises this airport's code is an ode to the airport's orchard history. I imagine that Chicago's primary airport would want the code of CHI, considering the town is well known as Chi-Town. CHI, however, seems to be used by Chicago's metropolitan area as a whole for its various airports, as opposed to one of them in particular. This means all of Chicago's airports use it / none of them don't? I'm not too sure. If any plane or Chicago enthusiasts could explain that one to me down below, that would be appreciated. Many airports are named after important figures from that area, though some airports have codes that reference these important figures, but the airport's name itself does not. A quite confusing example of this is with Kyrgyzstan's main international airport. This airport is near to the nation's capital of Bishkek. However, it is not called Bishkek International or anything like that. Instead, it is called Manas International Airport, with Manas being a legendary figure in the nation's folklore. However, the airport's code is FRU, which sounds nothing like Manas, Bishkek, or even Kyrgyzstan. This code comes from the real person of Mikhail Flunz, a Bolshevik leader who was born in modern-day Kyrgyzstan. So the airport itself is named after a legendary figure, but its code comes from a different real person. As I stated, these code names can be really weird, though more fitting ones are taken, it would seem. As mentioned, MAN for Manas is taken by Manchester Airport here in the UK. BSK, which could be used to represent Bishkek, however, is used by Biskra Airport in Algeria, though KYG, which could represent Kyrgyzstan as a whole, seems to be available, so perhaps they could go with that if they wished. Though perhaps one of the strangest ones, along with the story behind it, has to come from Northwest Florida Beaches International Airport, which despite the name has no international flights. Its code is ECP, which literally has no connection at all to the airport's name or the city's name it serves, Panama City. This is actually a relatively new airport, opening in 2010. This means that many of these codes were already taken, including the airport's preference of TFB, standing for the Florida Beaches. This code was taken by a small airport in Papua New Guinea. Man, why is Papua New Guinea taking all the good ones? So instead, the IATA gave the airport a list of available codes, one of those being ECP. This airport serves a part of the state where a lot of people come for spring break and to party, so the people at the airport jokingly said that ECP could stand for Everyone Can Party, because everyone can and does party there. This idea was liked so much by everyone that actually stuck. So yeah, this airport's code literally stands for Everyone Can Party, only in Florida. Though perhaps most importantly of all, sometimes these three-letter codes can form some sort of rude/funny word or acronym of sorts. These will make even the most nervous of flyers giggle. In example, we have Omega Airport in Namibia, which has the code of OMG. There's also Derby Field Airport in Lovelock in the USA, which has the code of LOL. Gerald R. Ford International, once again in the US, has the code of GRR, which makes most pilots heading to it sound annoyed. And just to end things on a really classy note, Bolesław Airport in the city of Perm in Russia has the code of PEE, and the airport of the Brazilian city Pocos de Caldas uses the code of POO. These codes bring back memories of entering names in arcade machine high score lists, or even at bowling alleys. It's just a shame that Assiut International Airport in Egypt went with ATZ instead of a more childish choice. Airport codes were suggested by Nancy Moon Smith, and thanks to their suggestion, they will now be honoured as Name Explain's patron saint of airport codes. Do you have a good idea for somewhere that's name could be covered in a Name Explain video? If so, then please consider donating on Patreon. Just $1 a month helps keep the channel running and earns you a weekly chance to suggest somewhere to be turned into a video, and you too could be a Name Explain Patreon saint. Thank you to all my patrons who support Name Explain on a monthly basis. Patreon is vital to Name Explain, and donating just $2 a month allows you to enjoy ad-free videos and bonus Patreon-exclusive content. It also allows you to help choose what names get explained in upcoming videos, and gets your name here with all these awesome people. Thank you so much for all the support you guys give Name Explain. Thank you so much for reaching the end of the video. Check out another video and subscribe to stay in the loop on all things Name Explain. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram where I'm Name Explain YT, and also join the Facebook group Friends of Name Explain, both of which will be linked down below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and once again, thank you all so much.